All right, deep diver. Looks like you're really trying to sharpen up your thinking with all these notes and articles about cognitive biases. So let's take a deep dive into these mental shortcuts and see how they mess with us all.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how they work behind the scenes shaping our choices. You don't even realize it half the time.
It's like a puppet master you can't see.
Yeah.
Let's start with black swan events,
Yeah.
like when everyone thought all swans were white and then they found black swans in Australia.
Exactly. Our limited experience can really blindside us to what's actually possible. We base our assumptions on what we know, but what we know is usually just a tiny piece of the puzzle.
It makes you think about how much we take for granted.
Right.
We think we've got the world figured out and then bam,
Right.
a black swan event shows up and throws everything off. Dobelli talks about the stock market crash in 1987. Everyone thought the market would keep going up, but then one day it just dropped 22%. No one saw it coming.
That's the thing about black swan events. They're unpredictable,
Mm.
but like the belly says, that doesn't mean we can't get ready for them.
Okay, so how do we prepare for something we don't even know is coming? Do we just walk around assuming the worst all the time?
Not exactly. It's more about being resilient and understanding that unexpected things are going to happen. Good and bad. It's just a part of life.
So, like having a safety net instead of freaking out all the time.
Exactly. Dobelli talks about practical things like managing your debt and having some money saved up. It's not about preventing black swans. It's about weathering the storm when they hit.
That makes sense. It's about minimizing the damage. But he also says that not every black swan is bad, right? Some can be good, like finding a great business idea or unexpectedly falling in love.
Absolutely. And thinking about your notes on listeners' specific area of interest, have you thought about how positive black swans might impact your mention a specific goal or challenge the listener is facing?
You're right. We focus so much on avoiding risks. We forget about the good things that can happen unexpectedly.
It's like that saying, fortune favors the bold. Putting yourself out there, exploring new things, being open to possibilities. That's how you find those lucky black swans.
So, deep diver. It's all about balancing, preparing for the bad stuff while staying open to good surprises. Who knows what exciting black swans are waiting out there?
Now let's talk about another bias that messes with our choices without us realizing it. Social proof?
Oh, yeah. The whole herd mentality thing, like when you see people looking up at the sky and you can't help but look up too, even though you have no idea what they're looking at.
Exactly. It's that instinct to follow the crowd, especially when you're not sure what to do. Back in the day when we were hunter-gatherers, it made sense. If everyone was running, you ran too. It could save your life.
Our brains think, hey, if everyone else is doing it, it must be the right thing to do. But does that still apply today?
Well, that's where things get tricky. This herd mentality might have kept us safe in the past, but these days it can lead us in the wrong direction.
I get it. Just because everyone's jumping on a trend doesn't mean it's the right choice for you.
Exactly. Dobelli talks about how social proof is used everywhere, from advertising to politics to social media.
I see that, like those going viral things online where everyone suddenly jumps on the bandwagon, whether it's a dance or a hashtag.
Exactly. It creates this feeling that you have to do it. You don't want to miss out. And that's how you get manipulated. The Solomon Asch experiment shows this really well. Do you remember that study?
Oh, yeah. The one with the lines? Everyone had to match a line to the one with the same length, but the other people in the room were actors, and they gave the wrong answer on purpose.
And the surprising thing was how often the real participant, even though they knew the right answer, they went along with the group and gave the wrong answer.
It's crazy how strong social pressure can be even when you know better. It makes you wonder how often we make decisions based on what other people are doing instead of using our own judgment.
And that's the point, deep diver. Don't let the herd make your choices for you. Do your own research, weigh the evidence, and trust your gut. Remember those articles you sent about listeners' area of interest? This bias could be affecting things there too.
It's good to remember to question things and think for yourself. Speaking of questioning our choices, let's move on to a bias that can keep us stuck in the past. The sunk cost fallacy.
Yes. The trap of throwing good money after bad. Dobelli tells this funny story about sitting through a terrible movie just because he already bought the ticket. Have you ever done that?
Oh, totally. I've watched some really bad movies just because I didn't want to waste the money I spent on the ticket. Even though I wasn't enjoying it, I felt like I had to stay.
That's exactly how the sunk cost fallacy works. We keep investing in something, time, money, effort, just because we've already invested a lot, even when it's clear it's not working anymore.
It's like we're trying to convince ourselves our past decisions were good, even when they weren't. Dobelli also talks about some bigger historical examples, like the Concorde supersonic jet.
The Concorde, a technological wonder for sure, but also a money pit. Even when it was obvious that it wasn't going to make money, the governments of the UK and France just kept throwing money at it. They couldn't admit they were wrong.
Wow, that's a huge example of the sunk cost fallacy. And it's not just governments, businesses, relationships, even our own personal lives.
You mentioned some things you're struggling with in the listener's area of interest in your notes. Do you think the sunk cost fallacy might be playing a part in your decision-making there?
That's a good point. Sometimes we get attached to a certain path, even when it's not taking us where we want to go, just because we've invested so much in it.
Exactly. So to beat this bias, you have to stop focusing on the past and look to the future. Instead of dwelling on what you've already invested, ask yourself, if I were starting fresh today, knowing what I know now, would I still make the same choice?
That's a powerful question. It makes you forget about what you've already put in and decide based on what's really best for you going forward.
Now let's talk about a bias that can sneak up on you and influence your choices.
Reciprocity.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I'm interested. Tell me more about that.
Have you ever been in a situation where someone gave you something for free and then you felt like you had to give something back even though you didn't really want to? All the time. Like when you take a free sample at the store and then buy something you didn't need just because you feel bad.
Exactly. Or those times when a charity sends you free address labels or a calendar, hoping you'll donate. It's all about that feeling that you have to return the favor.
It's funny how that works. Our brains want to even the score even if we didn't ask for the favor in the first place.
Exactly. Dobelli says this was really important for survival way back when. Sharing and helping each other out meant the group could survive.
It makes sense that that kind of give and take would help our ancestors. But what about today?
Well, like a lot of these biases, what used to be helpful can become a weakness in a different situation. Now this natural instinct to return favors can be used against us, making us feel like we owe someone even for things we didn't ask for.
So it's not just about being nice back. It's about realizing that people can use this to manipulate us.
Exactly. Think about those free trials for software or online services. They're count on this feeling of obligation. They give you something for free, hoping you'll sign up and pay once the trial is over.
They make you feel like you owe them something, even though you haven't actually agreed to anything.
Exactly. So be careful about this bias. The next time someone offers you something for free, ask yourself, what do they really want from me?
So deep diver, watch out for those freebies. They might come with a hidden cost, the cost of obligation.
Now let's talk about an emotion that can be both inspiring and destructive.
Envy.
Envy. That green-eyed monster. Oh,
Oh.
it's so easy to compare yourself to others and feel like you're not good enough.
It's a powerful emotion, and it's been around forever. Dobelli asks this interesting question about envy, which would make you feel worse. Your friend gets a raise and you don't. Neither of you gets a raise. Or both your salaries are cut.
That's a tough one. I think I'd feel the worst if my friend got a raise and I didn't. It's not that I wouldn't be happy for them, but I'd definitely be envious.
That's what most people say. It shows that envy is often about how you compare to others, not how well you're doing overall. You feel left behind, even if you're doing okay objectively. Right. You could be living a good life, but then someone you know gets something you want, and suddenly you feel less than.
Like that story Dobelli tells about the farmer who finds a magic lamp. And when the genie asks for his wish, the farmer says, I want my neighbor's cow to die.
Oh, yeah, that one. It's funny, but also kind of sad. It shows how envy can make you want bad things for other people.
Mhm.
It's so much better to appreciate what you have instead of focusing on what others have.
Exactly. It's easy to fall into that trap, especially nowadays with social media where you're constantly seeing these perfect pictures of other people's lives. It's important to remember that social media is just a highlight reel.
Right. Everyone has problems and insecurities, even the people who seem like they have it all.
Definitely. And that leads to an important point that Dobelli makes about the difference between envy and jealousy. Envy is between two people. Jealousy involves three people. Envy is wanting what someone else has. Jealousy is being afraid someone will take what you have.
So envy is more about wanting something, and jealousy is about being afraid of losing something.
Exactly. It's helpful to know the difference
Mhm.
because then you can understand where these emotions are coming from and how they affect you.
So what if you are feeling envious? How do you get rid of that green-eyed monster? Is it even possible?
It's definitely possible, but you have to work at it and change your perspective. Dobelli has some good advice. First, stop comparing yourself to others. That's a recipe for unhappiness. Focus on your own strengths and what you want to achieve. Remember what you wrote about your passion for listeners' specific interest or skill.
Yeah, those are things I really enjoy doing. It doesn't matter what other people are doing. I guess it's easy to forget that when you're busy comparing yourself.
Exactly. Be proud of your own journey and what you've accomplished. Everyone is on their own path. And find something you're really good at and passionate about.
It's about feeling good about yourself without needing other people to tell you you're good.
Exactly. You mentioned that you've been trying to listeners' specific goal or challenge. Maybe focusing on getting better at that could help you stop feeling envious.
It's about finding satisfaction in what you do and what you achieve, not by comparing yourself to others.
Now let's move on to something that's a big problem these days. The paradox of choice.
Oh, yeah. We have more choices than ever before, but are we really happier?
That's the paradox. We think more choice means more freedom and happiness. But Dobelli says too much choice can actually make you indecisive and unhappy.
It's like you're drowning in options. There are just too many possibilities. Remember that part in Dobelli's book where he talks about going to the grocery store and there are 134 kinds of wine, 48 kinds of yogurt, and 30,000 items total.
Exactly. That's what it's like to be a consumer today. You're bombarded with choices. And it's not just groceries. It's your job, your relationships, even your entertainment. We're always scrolling through endless lists trying to find the perfect thing.
It's exhausting. I do that all the time. Sometimes I spend more time researching and comparing than actually enjoying the thing I finally choose.
It happens to a lot of people. Dobelli talks about this experiment where they offered people free samples of jelly. When there were 24 flavors, people were overwhelmed and didn't buy much. But when there were only 6 flavors, sales went up.
Wow. That shows how too much choice can be a bad thing. It makes you tired of making decisions, and then you're not even happy with what you choose.
It's like your brain can't handle too many options. You get so busy analyzing and comparing that you forget what you actually want.
So how do you deal with all these choices without getting lost? How do you avoid spending your whole life scrolling and second-guessing?
You can learn to be more careful and intentional with your choices.
Yeah.
Dobelli says you should think about what's really important to you before you make a big decision. Like buying a new phone, planning a vacation, or even changing careers. Take some time to figure out what really matters to you.
So you need to know your values and goals so you can ignore all the distractions and focus on the things that really matter.
Exactly. You said in your notes that you're having trouble with listeners' specific example of choice overload. Maybe if you focus on what's most important to you, it'll be easier to narrow down your choices and make a decision you feel good about.
It's a good reminder that more isn't always better. Sometimes having fewer choices actually makes you happier.
Now let's talk about a kind of knowledge that can be really tricky. Chauffeur knowledge.
Chauffeur knowledge, that's a new one. Tell me about that.
Dobelli tells this great story about Max Planck. He won the Nobel Prize in Physics, and his chauffeur.
Oh, I think I know this one. The chauffeur ends up giving the lecture on quantum mechanics because he's heard Planck talk about it so many times while driving him around.
Exactly. It's a funny way to show the difference between real knowledge and just pretending to know.
Yeah.
The chauffeur knew all the words, but he didn't really understand what they meant. He could talk the talk, but he couldn't walk the walk.
So it's like having all the right answers but not really understanding what you're talking about. It's about sounding smart, not being smart.
Exactly. Yeah. And Dobelli says this chauffeur knowledge is everywhere. We see it in the news, in business, even with our friends.
It's like those people who use all the right buzzwords, but they can't explain anything if you ask them to.
Exactly. They might have the vocabulary, but they don't really understand.
Yeah.
And that's when it gets dangerous, because people can be fooled by those who sound confident, even if they don't really know what they're talking about.
So how do you spot those fake experts? What are the signs?
Dobelli says, pay attention to how people react when they don't know the answer. Real experts admit when they don't know something. They're more interested in learning than in pretending to know everything. People with chauffeur knowledge will try to fake it. They use jargon and general statements to hide the fact that they don't really know.
So you should look for people who are humble enough to admit when they don't know something. That's a sign of a true expert.
Exactly. And that's a good lesson for all of us. It's okay to not know everything. Real learning is about being curious, asking questions, and always trying to learn more. We're all students in the school of life.
I like that. It takes the pressure off. You don't have to have all the answers. Speaking of learning and persuading, let's talk about another bias that's used a lot in marketing and sales. The liking bias.
Ah, yes. The power of charm. This one is about how your feelings for someone can affect your decisions.
I know what you mean. I've definitely bought things because I liked the salesperson.
Dobelli tells a funny story about his friend who bought 2 expensive bottles of wine just because he liked the salesperson.
That's funny. It's amazing how being charming can make people spend money.
And marketers know this. They use all sorts of tricks to make you like them and their products.
Like using attractive models in advertising.
Exactly. Being attractive is one way to make people like you. We're naturally drawn to people who look good and that can make us trust them and believe what they're saying.
It's like our brains think if they look this good, they must be trustworthy and their product must be great.
It's a basic instinct that people have been using forever. And it's not just about looks. Similarity is another way to make people like you. We tend to like people who are like us in terms of background values or interests.
That's why so many commercials show regular people. They're trying to make you feel like they understand you, like they're just like you.
Exactly. They want you to feel connected to them. And when you feel connected, you're more likely to trust them.
That's smart. It's all about building trust and making you feel like you're part of the group.
Yeah.
What other tricks are there?
Compliments. Everyone likes to hear nice things about themselves. And salespeople know that giving you a compliment can make you lower your guard and be more open to what they're selling.
It's like they're sweet-talking you before they ask for your money.
Exactly. It's
Wow.
a subtle form of manipulation that you might not even notice.
So deep diver. Be careful about those liking triggers. Don't let someone's charm make you buy something you don't need. Ask yourself, do I really want this? Or am I just buying it because I like the salesperson?
And it's not just about buying things. This bias can affect your decisions in all parts of life. Think about your notes on listeners' area of interest. Could the liking bias be affecting your judgment or choices in that area?
That's a good point. I've definitely been more open to ideas when they come from people I like and respect. I need to remember to think about who's giving me information and whether I'm letting my feelings for them cloud my judgment.
Dobelli says that companies like Tupperware are really good at using the liking bias.
Oh, yeah, I can see how that works. They have their salespeople host parties at their homes, so they're using their friendships to sell stuff.
Exactly. They create this feeling of community and obligation.
It's interesting how these parties that seem like fun can actually be clever marketing. It's all about using our need to connect and our tendency to return favors.
Exactly. And charities do the same thing. They use pictures of cute animals or kids in their ads because they know those images make people feel good and more likely to donate. They're playing on your emotions.
It's amazing how these biases are working on us all the time. It's like a secret code that's controlling our behavior.
And that's why it's so important to understand them. Once you know about these biases, you can start making better choices.
We've really gone deep, haven't we? From those black swan events to how much we like to be liked. So many ways our brains can be tricked.
Yeah, it's pretty wild how these biases helped our ancestors survive, but still mess with us today.
It's like carrying these ancient programs around in our heads, shaping everything we see and do. Sometimes it's helpful, but like we've talked about, sometimes it backfires.
That's why Dobelli's work is so important. He's like shining a spotlight on these things that are secretly controlling us, helping us understand what's really going on.
Like he's giving us a decoder ring for the human mind, right? So we can figure out all the hidden influences that are messing with our heads.
And the more we get it, the better we can make choices that actually line up with what we want.
Thinking about your notes on listeners' area of interest, which of these biases do you think might be a problem for you?
That's a good question. Maybe that social proof thing is messing with how you see specific challenge or decision. Or maybe you're sticking to something that's not working because of the sunk cost fallacy.
It really makes you think about how these biases could be working behind the scenes, shaping our lives without us even knowing.
It all comes back to being self-aware. The more you understand your own mind, the better you can make decisions.
It's like we're taking the wheel, becoming the drivers of our own lives instead of just going along for the ride. So, deep diver, what's the biggest thing you're taking away from this deep dive into cognitive biases?
Maybe just realizing that we all have these mental shortcuts. It's not about beating yourself up about it. It's about knowing they're there and learning how to deal with them.
It's about accepting that we're not perfect, but still trying to make the best choices we can.
Exactly. And remember, this is just the beginning. The more you learn about these biases, the easier it'll be to handle all the crazy stuff life throws at you and make choices that make you happy.
And that's a wrap. A crash course in thinking clearly. We've explored the crazy world of cognitive biases and how they can mess with us.
We've laughed, we've thought, and hopefully you've learned some things that will help you in your own life.
Remember, deep diver, knowledge is power. Now that you know about these biases, you're one step closer to making smarter choices. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep that amazing brain of yours sharp, happy thinking.